After spending an amazing summer in Florence with his college sweetheart, Colleen, and having introduced her to his cousin, Anna, Eric is finally ready to take the next step in this relationship. He organizes a romantic treasure hunt that eventually leads Colleen to a picnic, where Eric surprises her with a proposal. But Colleen's happiness fades when she sees the ring, and a pitiful expression comes on her face. Cut to the next morning, when Anna and her husband Gianni come to wake Eric up for his flight back to the States. They find Eric sad and miserable in bed. Eric tells them that Colleen left, and the rest is understood. He asks to stay a few more days and the couple agrees, leaving him alone. But 48 hours later, when Eric still hasn't left the bed, Anna pulls him up on his feet and takes him outside. Eric obliges, but the spark on his face is missing. He's heartbroken as he tells her that Colleen was the woman he fell completely in love with, and it felt like forever with her, but he now wonders if he'll ever find that again. Anna tries to cheer him up and takes him to her class where she teaches Italian to the non-natives to help Eric distract himself. Eric makes friends with a few students, and later that night, they all convene for dinner and drinks. There, everyone finds out that Eric once played professional football for a team from Chicago. But unfortunately, a year ago, he hurt his knee badly and wasn't able to play anymore, though he's been rehabilitating and should soon be back on the field. They drink the night away, and Gianni keeps calling Eric Urquhart, but doesn't tell him what that means. Eric tries asking him, but then drops the matter as they go for another round of shots. The next day, the men play some football, and Gianni notices that Eric is still in good form. Later, when he gets a mysterious call from someone and has to leave, he takes Eric along. On the way over to the place, Eric sees a woman who has the same hair as Colleen, and his mind takes him back to the happy memories they shared. When they arrive at the place, Eric sees a bunch of men playing with a football, but it isn't exactly the sport. Gianni tells him that it's the sport of calcio storico. It is an ancient game that they play in Florence, and from the looks of it, wild too. The army of Caesar liked it to prepare for battle. All one has to do is take the ball to the other side of the field, throw it in the net, and that gives the team 1 point, but if it's thrown over the net, then the other team gets half a point. The thing about this game that makes it very dangerous is, there are no more rules. You can play however you like, if it means that you'll win. Gianni tells Eric that he was called here by the team's captain, Paolo, to select newcomers to the group. Once upon a time, Gianni played this game, but Anna made him stop because it is too dangerous. This game is played every summer as a tourist attraction, but for the locals, it means serious business. When Eric sees just how brutal yet manly the game is, he is intrigued. The chances of the new guys don't seem too good, and Eric wants to play a game. But Gianni hesitates. He can't let Eric get in trouble, especially with this busted knee. But Eric convinces him, and Gianni talks to Paolo about letting Eric play. Paolo agrees to let Eric play for practice, but Eric's play surpasses everyone's expectations. He holds up well between the rugged men, and eventually gains Paolo's respect for playing decently. Paolo suggests that Eric practices often with them, but Eric wants to join the team. Paolo, who is a man of great pride, refuses at first, because Eric isn't one of them. He is an American and not a native, but Eric's charm wears him down, and he agrees to entertain the thought. The next day, a statue reminds Eric of Colleen again. He thinks back to their romantic moments, and then recalls how Colleen rejected his proposal. She wanted him to enroll in law school, as he had planned to do, but Eric wanted to wait some more time before devoting himself to it. But Colleen couldn't marry him if he wasn't going to be serious about the future, so she walked away. Later that night, Eric fills up the NYU Law School application. While on a run the next morning, Luke comes across the Santo Spirito parade passing through the city. That night, Luke practices with the rest of the guys. There are some girls watching the players from the bleacher steps, and one of them is Stefania, Gianni's sister and Paolo's girlfriend. Gianni introduces Eric to his sister, and Stefania reminds Eric that they met at Gianni and Anna's wedding. However, Eric can't seem to remember the girl, and Stefania tells him it's okay, since she was just a teenager back then. She then introduces Eric to her friend Concetta, who seems overly interested in Eric. When Paolo joins them, Eric asks if he can officially play with them, and Paolo invites him to the team dinner, where he'll announce his decision on the players. At the dinner the next day, Paolo announces that Eric will be joining the team, along with some new players. This upsets a few team members, but Paolo sticks by his choice of welcoming Eric to the family. Later, Gianni talks to Eric about how he still hasn't been able to move to Rome as he always wanted to. He feels frustrated that the economy just won't let him move out of his mother's home. Just then, Stefania shows up and joins the men. She keeps Eric company, and he apologizes for not remembering her from the wedding. Stefania doesn't mind, since she barely even spoke English at the time. She tells him that her love for English and America started from that visit years ago. Eric asks her what made her love America so much, and Stefania feels embarrassed to tell him the truth. But after some coercing, she eventually tells him that it's because of her massive teen crush on him. When she found out that Eric was a football player, she started following American football and fell in love with the sport. As the night passes, the two keep talking and end up taking a walk together. When Eric asks Stefania about Paolo, she tells him that he's a nice man and he loves her a lot, but is just a little too old school in his thinking. They walk past the statue of Hercules, and Stefania tells him that Gianni named him after Hercules, Hercules. She tells him how Hercules had to complete 12 missions before he was free. They spend some more time together, seeing the fireworks for the Festival of San Giovanni, but Eric can't help think about Colleen in that moment. The next morning, Eric leaves for the first game of the tournament. The whole of Florence is celebrating the festival, and is gathered to see the game. The game begins, and it is not easy for Eric to fit in with the crowd of Italians. He faces a few difficulties and is pounded into the ground a lot, but Eric's persistence and the team's effort get them their first win ever. Team White celebrates their victory, and Paolo expresses his gratitude to the new members, especially Eric. After his win, whenever Eric goes, people recognize him, and even give him stuff for free. At the celebratory party, Eric spends all of his time having fun with Stefania. They drink and dance, and then Stefania walks him home. On the walkover, Stefania compliments Eric's play at the game. She could tell he was enjoying himself while playing. Eric finds it strange how Stefania seems to know him so well, yet he doesn't know much about her. He asks her questions about herself and her ambitions. Stefania tells him that she's a recent graduate of architecture, but she can't practice that in Florence, because every monument and building here has so much rich culture and history that it's impossible to build anything new. When they arrive at Eric's place, they make plans to meet the next day again, and while parting ways, they share a quick kiss, which they both immediately feel weird about, but not in a bad way. The next day, Eric shows Anna his progress in Italian, and Anna couldn't be more proud, but she senses that he's probably learning so fast to impress a girl. Eric admits to it, but doesn't tell her who the girl is. Anna only warns him to be careful with Italian girls, because they're a bit too complicated. When Gianni shows up, he praises Eric for the game, and this irks Anna. She doesn't want Eric to play such a violent game. That's why she got Gianni to stop in the past, but Eric assures her that he will be fine. Though she doesn't believe him, she lets it go. Eric leaves for his day out with Stefania, and they drive around the city on mopeds. When they finally arrive at the place Stefania wanted to show him, Eric is mesmerized by the beautiful scenery. It's her favorite place in the city, and she tells him it makes her happy to be there with him. Eric feels the same way, but he's worried about Paolo. He doesn't want to do anything that will betray Paolo, because he is his teammate and a friend. Stefania tells him how her relationship with Paolo isn't going all that well, and she isn't happy with him. But Eric is still skeptical. What if she chooses to be with him in this place tomorrow? Stefania tells him he has no need to be jealous, and asks him to exist in the present. No one knows what tomorrow may bring. It may be that Eric can choose to go back to Colleen, but that doesn't mean they have to give up living in the present. Eric agrees with her, and the two take things forward and start to make out. They go all the way, right there in the middle of the field. Next day, Gianni takes Eric to the market where all the players work together. He tells Eric that Paolo will teach him the rest, and Eric wonders if Paolo has always worked at the market. Gianni tells him that when Paolo was 18, he was a great soccer player, and he even signed for a big professional team. But he couldn't make it there, because while he was good, he wasn't good enough. At the market, Eric is greeted by Paolo, and he gives him the lay of the land. Eric starts helping the men, and bonds with Paolo. Paolo tells him that he's played Calcio Storico for many years, but he'll be too old to participate next year, so this will be his last game. For the last 5 years, their team has lost against the blue team in the finals, and it's important for Paolo to win and go out with a bang. When a man comes and says something in Italian about Paolo's girlfriend, Eric only catches half of it. Paolo goes on to elaborate how he tries very hard with his girlfriend, but it's difficult with her. Now that he thinks of Eric as a brother, Paolo warns him to swear off Italian girls, because they are very difficult to deal with. One evening, while he's studying Italian, Gianni asks Eric if he's okay, and if there's some people bothering him around the town. His concern is very out of the blue, and Eric wonders if he should be worried about something. But Gianni brushes the matter away, asking Eric to only hang out with Stefania, and she'll take care of him. Meanwhile, Eric and Stefania continue their rendezvous and keep meeting each other in secret, continuing their romantic adventure. One day, Anna tells Eric that she's pregnant. Eric is over the moon with this good news. She also tells him that she might soon be moving to Rome with Gianni, because he's been telling her that he might be able to arrange the funds after all, and is very excited about the new beginnings about to enter her life. At the practice that night, Eric and Stefania exchange flirtatious looks with each other, but when Paolo tries to kiss Stefania, Eric can't help but feel bothered by it. While out and about in the city, Eric successfully gives directions to a tourist couple in Italian, and feels so proud of knowing the language. Anna takes him to show the alley of the honest man, and Eric notices that it's pretty narrow. Anna agrees, saying that there are not a lot of honest men in Florence, but Paolo is one of them. Eric is embarrassed that Anna knows about his affair. She tells him to come clean to Paolo, and while they're at it, asks him if his feelings for Stefania are real or not. But Eric can't really say that yet. Late at night, while Stefania and Eric are walking the streets, they are approached by angry-looking men from the blue team who start chasing them. Stefania tells Eric to run, and the two hide under the bridge. The men are angry because they don't think Eric should be playing the game, since he is not a native. But neither of them cares as they start goofing around. The next day, while rowing with Paolo, Eric finally comes clean to him about Stefania. Eric apologizes for what he did, saying that he really cares about Stefania. But Paolo loves her. Heartbroken by their betrayal, Paolo tells Eric to get away from him and leave. When he meets up with Stefania later and tells her about Paolo's reaction, she feels bad about not coming clean to the man earlier. But now that everything's out in the open, Stefania wants to enjoy Eric's last few days with him before he leaves for America after the summer. Eric suggests they plan a date the next day, but this baffles Stefania because it's the day of the finals. Eric then tells her that Paolo kicked him off the team and he can't play anymore. This angers Stefania because Paolo can't decide for the rest of the team. She gets even angrier at Eric for just doing whatever people tell him to do. He should have fought back if he wanted to play for the glory of Florence. She asks him why he's even here in Florence, but Eric has no answer for her. He doesn't know. This irks Stefania even more because Eric never seems to know what he wants to do or why he's doing it. She tells him to listen to what his heart says, if he even knows what that is, and leaves. That night, Gianni forces Eric to fix things and get back on the team, or else they'll lose without him. Gianni's urgency forces Eric to get ready to confront Paolo. While changing in his room, Eric gets a visitor. He's surprised to see Colleen back, but not in a good way. They push past the small talk, and Colleen tells him she found out about his law school application from her uncle. She wants him to come back home. Taken aback by her sudden ask, Eric tells her that she can't do this to him, after all this time. But all Colleen wants is for him to come back home, where they have their lives sorted out. She wants to leave tomorrow, but Eric tells her he has a game. Suddenly, Stefania enters the room and sees the two. Eric tells her that they're just talking, and Stefania leaves, rather disappointed. Colleen doesn't ask many questions about Stefania, and tells Eric they can talk about their relationship after his game tomorrow. Eric and Gianni arrive at the market, where the whole team is gathered. Paolo sees Eric and refuses to take him back in the team. But Gianni is furious. He insists that without Eric, they can't win the game, and tomorrow's game is very important. Paolo knows all about why that game is so important to Gianni. It's because he has a lot of money riding on their win. Gianni argues that at least he's betting on his own team, unlike Paolo, who is knowingly setting them up for failure. Seeing this, Eric steps up and asks Paolo to hit him and be done with it. Paolo takes a punch at Eric, but is nowhere close to getting over his betrayal. But he can't ignore the obvious. They need Eric to win the game, and Paolo would rather end himself than lose his last game. With Eric back in the team, they enter the tournament the next day. The game begins, and it's a close match with the blue team, who are rough and unforgiving. It's the last 30 seconds of the game, and the blue team is winning by a score of 3.5 goals, whereas the white team is at 3 goals. They have only 30 seconds to make it, and it's Eric and Paolo's teamwork that wins them the game in the last second. Everyone rejoices, having won the very first game in 5 years. While everyone celebrates, Eric watches as Stefania makes her way to Paolo. Meanwhile, Colleen walks to him and asks him to come back, now that the game is over. Eric tells her that he isn't going anywhere. He might be a lawyer years from now, but not today. He wants something different from his life right now. Colleen accepts his answer and leaves, heartbroken. Then, Eric sees Stefania kissing Paolo and making her way to him. She tells him that she bid Paolo goodbye for good, and they kiss, starting their new lives together.